So sorry about that wait, guys. So we're just here having a little chat with the president of the CWA, Winnie Batt, and the Mother Bar Clinic of Nursing Director, Heather Hancock. Just have a few questions to them about what life is like living and working out in the bush. So yeah, we'll get started on that then. So we'll just start off with a little bit about your background. So where exactly did you guys come from?
After you, Heather. My name's Heather Hancock. I was brought up in Maryborough, and I did my nurses training at the Maryborough Base Hospital. I started in 1982, so I've been a nurse for about 42 years. I'm also a midwife and a rural and remote endorsed nurse. I started working in the bush about 10 years ago. I'd been working in a prison and found that very challenging, as well as, but I became quite despondent with it and decided that I needed a change, and decided to go bush. And started working in remote areas and really found my niche. And I was fortunate to get a job here in Muddaburra about 5 years ago. And I just really love the community, the friendly people, and they're all invested and really like the clinic, and it's such a social and enduring place.
So I actually, most of my childhood was spent 40 k's north of here, and I went to boarding school in Brisbane, and I came home for a few years afterwards. I've spent some time working in shearing sheds and then looking after kids and a childcare centre, and then my now husband and I moved to Melbourne. We lived there for 3.5 years, and I did a technical engineering course in jewellery, and then I worked for a Armenian jeweller in the city in Melbourne, and possibly I helped make a cocaine snorter for Mick Gatto, which was slightly terrifying, and the point at which I thought perhaps I should leave this job now. And so my husband and I came back to Queensland. We lived in a 40-foot van for about 5 years fencing, and he's a bush bloke as well. We always wanted to, live in the bush, and so we were lucky enough for things to all line up very nicely and be able to purchase a little block of land 45 k's north of here, which is kind of the slightly opposite direction to where I grew up, but it's actually the old home of one of my best friends from primary school. So it was very strange moving in to the parents' room when I was actually the parent. And it was, so I've gone on to have 4 kids, and we have an off-farm business, fencing and yard building as well still. I feel very lucky to live here. And I loved living in Melbourne, and I kind of feel like I probably could adapt anywhere, but there's something really special about the bush, and I'm completely biased obviously, but I feel like there's something extra special about Muddaburra. We have young govies and backpackers and employees, living at our place. We've got a few cottages and with our businesses, and my kids do correspondence school, and they all fall in love with Muddaburra too. So I feel like, if you can bring someone over from Germany and they can see, how great Muddaburra is, then I can't be totally blindsided by my bias. So.
Of course. So I just think we'll move on to just another question now. So what would an average work day look like for the both of you?
Well, mine's, I work Monday to Friday. I start at 8 to 4:30. We see patients starting from 8:30. We're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the period of time that we're here. We also look after the ambulance, so we could have a call any time of the night or day. But in the bush here, most people only ring an ambulance if they absolutely have to. It's not like you're in the city where they're often treated as a taxi service. You know that if you're getting a call for the ambulance in this community, there is something seriously wrong. We spend our days. Our doctor comes once a week, so we get to, people can see their GP once a week. We also have a lot of other support services that visit. We have mothers and babies. We do all the kids' vaccinations. We do health promotion for adults, all their immunisations when required. It can be busy, and sometimes you have in the summer especially during in the winter, this time of year, the tourists who are like living and travelling in the rural remote areas, they create quite a bit of business for us. But in the summer, it's a little bit quieter.
So I'm lucky enough to have a great young girl, Courtney, who's our govey. So I don't have to teach my children school, and these are 3 of my children. There's the other one. So on Monday, Courtney's away and Mum's teaching school. So how does everyone feel about that? Terrible. So hopefully there's no tears from all of us on Monday. But these kids head off to the schoolroom at 8 o'clock in the morning. And of course I've got a 4-month-old baby, so my life's a little bit of chaos at the moment. But my husband, Monday to Friday, is generally away fencing and yard building. So it's the kids and I and Miss Courtney in her cottage. We've got 2 blokes working for us at the moment. They're generally off with Ian as well. This morning I got up and fed the baby and got the kids organised. We've got a new puppy. Then I fed some weaners, had to unload some hay and had some cattle in the yard. And yeah, we do cattle work. We don't have sheep, but we would like to get sheep. We're putting up a dingo wild dog exclusion fence around our property, and it's not quite finished yet. I also do all the books for our business, which are very behind. Don't tell me when the bass is due. And very varied. People come and go. I remember during COVID for like 3 weeks I fed 12 people every day. And I did feel very sorry for people in the city, but I sort of thought to myself, God, why can't I just be in isolation with no one here? But yeah, it varies. My kids are really lucky. On a Friday, they get to come into the Muttaburra State School here. There's about 9 full-time students. And on a Friday, another 8 or so bush kids come in. And so there's enough kids to, have 2 teams to play sport, and they do lots of fabulous activities. There's a great principal there at the moment. So obviously a lot of my life revolves around the kids and what they're up to. But yeah, that's...
Next question I had here, I just want to go into a little bit, I suppose, about the isolating nature of the bush. I just wanted to know if you think that's had any impact on your lives in any way, and if so, what those impacts would have been.
Well, I think because I grew up out here, I actually don't really think it's isolated. I think, every person here I know, and anyone in this town I'd be happy to ask for help. If I broke down, there's no way I'm ever scared, or I can always call someone. Fiona at the shop, I literally ring her and say, I need some food. Can you send me some food on the mail? And I say, I don't need carrots, but I need lots of milk. And she packs up my stores and sends them. So, she gets fresh fruit and veg from Brisbane. Obviously, online shopping has totally changed the isolation. I can get anything delivered to my doorstep. So when I go to a city and I have to actually go to the shops, it's terrible. But then healthcare, obviously with kids, we have a flying doctor box at home, which is, got a whole heap of medications and things in it, and I've got to ring the flying doctor. But having people like Heather and the other nurses at the clinic is amazing, being able to call them 24 hours a day. I actually personally think that we almost have better healthcare. Hearing about ramping and waiting in an emergency room, that just doesn't happen out here. And if you're that sick that you get on the flying doctor plane, it seems like you jump the queues. I think, of course, when it rains, that's probably a little bit, because we are then physically isolated. We've got a black soil road to our place, so we can't leave. But there's helicopters and and I think it makes you probably take some responsibility. Accidents still happen, but you probably need to be a little bit prepared. Don't go into the wet season with an empty pantry.
And certainly isolation in terms of our practice, like both my counterpart Virginia, who's been in this local hospital, our primary health clinic. She's worked here as a registered nurse for over 30 years. She's a credit, both her and Sue, our admin officer, an absolute credit to the community and to the clinic that it is. It's very well set up. And really, yeah, there's always someone to phone. You know, if you've got someone who's acutely unwell, there's always someone at the end of the phone. In terms of within the clinic, we have telehealth, and there's always an opportunity to, you know, ask for help. We have volunteers for our ambulance, and the community. I've never had, in the 5 years that I've been here, I've never had a time where I haven't been able to get a driver. So people do work together as teams because they have to in the bush. And like Winnie has said, there's so much, you know, there's so many support services and stuff that's available to people that perhaps you'd have to wait for a very long time if you're in the city. You know, allied health in terms of physios, podiatry, and having someone like, you don't come, like if you go to a city hospital, you'll wait in emergency potentially, depending on what your triage is, maybe 4 to 8 hours, you know. So, I mean, you may have to wait 10 or 20 minutes, you know, if I've already seen some other person. So, you know, in terms of that, we are very fortunate.
Okay, so we've just got a question specifically for you this time. Since we do understand that you've lived in the bush most of your life, you were born here and you did grow up here. How do you think things have changed since you were young and growing up compared to how your children are being raised now?
So the power went out at Hillview when Daisy, our eldest, was maybe 4, and Ian was away, and it wasn't that hot, so I didn't worry about starting the generator. I was pretty sure the power had come back on by morning. And when I put her to bed, she said, "Can we turn the air conditioning on?" And I said, no, the power's out. You know, we don't need aircon. And she said, "No, I really want aircon." And so I sat her down and I said, there's billions of kids all over the world sleeping without aircon, and it's actually not that hot, and we can open the window and it's totally fine. And at the end of my big spiel, she said, "So can we turn the aircon on now?" And I think I look back to when I was a kid and filling up my Bon Air with leaving a jug of water on top of my Bon Air to fill up. So we've got it pretty easy now. We've, got 4-wheel-drive cars, and we've got air conditioning, and there's amazing services that keep improving. I don't think anything's necessarily going backwards in the bush. I think, what was the question again?
Just how things have changed from when you were growing up to
so
how your children being raised.
I think it's probably, when I was a kid in town, there were 2 or 3 shearing teams in town, and now of course the closest shearing team is in Longreach, and so there's less people out here. There are definitely challenges getting employees. You know, we had to put up a special aerial so we could get some mobile reception at our house. We don't have it out on the property because it was really hard to attract young people if they couldn't use their phone. And so, things are changing for the better, but at the same time, there are, of course, still some challenges. Yeah.
And then just a little question for you. So, as you've moved into the bush, you've come from more, I suppose, populated areas. How are things how are things different from working as a nurse in those more populated areas compared to out here?
Well, it's because you're on your own. Ours is really a single nurse clinic, so, whether it be in the middle of the night or, early morning or just during the day, you are on your own. And, in the city you have all the doctors and anaesthetists and, capacity to do, incredible things, whereas we just have the basics here. We have great basics. But people who live in these rural communities understand that, we don't just have, all those facilities that we do have in the city, and they understand that. So we just basically do the best that we can, and we hope that, we can, improve people's lives by, doing the best that we can, and get them to, quickly as possible to a more you know, a higher acuity centre if it's needed. The RFDS do fly into Muttaburra. We have a functioning landing strip, so that certainly has happened at times. But most people are transferred via ambulance to Longreach should they need. Because we've got in recent years we've been fortunate at getting a CAT scan there. So in the past, when people would have, you know, fallen off a horse or injured their neck or been involved, coming off motorbikes is very common, especially since we've had all the grass and stuff. You know, they would have been flown to Brisbane, required to have a CAT scan to check their necks, but now, or any sort of head injury, so they're fortunate to be able to be managed, providing that they're well enough staying in Longreach. Because in Longreach they have, you know, all the facilities, very experienced doctors who do anaesthetics, are very capable and able to do lots of retrievals. So.
Next question I had is just more focused on, I suppose, gender. So I suppose what kind of gender-specific challenges do you believe there are living in the bush?
I probably have a different perspective. As in, my dad died when I was 16 and my mum took over our property. And so, and even, you know, my husband, his grandmother particularly is an amazing lady who, you know, nothing would ever stop her doing anything. So I think I have some really powerful female role models in my life. So if I want to do something, I do it. Yeah. So but there are certain occasions. I know that when Ian and I first started buying cattle, you know, and you get a stock and station agent, and if they sit down at the table and they just talk to Ian and they talk about his cattle, and you kind of think, hang on a minute, I was out fencing all week last week to pay the adjustment. You know, we've surrounded ourselves with people who know that it's our business, and so I haven't felt hindered by it at all. Yeah,
that's good.
I don't think there's really any gender, you know, because nurses, a large proportion of nursings are females, and there's a very large population of females working in the bush as well. But yeah, I don't see. I mean, maybe there may be sometimes difficult in terms of, you know, with what I do, with, you know, if we're at an accident scene or we're trying to get people out of cars. But the thing is, out here, you find everyone's there to help. Yeah. You know, all the fireys come, or the SES, or just, you know, bystanders. They're always willing to lend a hand. There's people in the bush are very different to in the city. Like, everyone wants to help each other out, and they're very conscious of the fact that there's only so few of us. Yeah. So, I think it's probably, there's no real bias.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. We'll just end with one last question then. I'm just giving one of them. So I'm just, I suppose, a question to the future. What do you see your lives being like the next 5 to 10 years?
Ooh, well, she'll only be 5, so we'll be in prep. So Daisy, our eldest, starts boarding school next year. And from when she starts to when Mabel finishes, we'll have 17 years straight of boarding school. So we'll still be in the realms of trekking to Townsville and back, probably. Yeah. But yeah, look, I think hopefully just still living a happy life out here. And hopefully the good seasons continue. They'll probably be in the middle of a huge drought. That's very,
The future for me, I've just recently had a significant birthday, and I've sort of had to sit back and think about what my future's going to be. I'm still a bit undecided.
Don't you leave.
That potentially is going to happen, and because all of us are a raging workforce, and the average age, that is probably going to be the biggest issue for people who do live in the bush, is getting staff, because the average age of a nurse is 56, the average age of a midwife is 58.
Wow.
So we're all moving towards that age where
there'll be an exodus.
And there's going to be a big shortfall. The Queensland government's saying that by 2030 there's going to be a shortfall of 100,000 nurses.
Oh, wow.
And all of us at the Muttaburra Primary Health Clinic are currently over the age of 55. So,
That's terrifying.
but yeah, my future will be here for the next few years. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to recruit to get some people.
Well, yeah, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you all so much, and thank you both for answering those questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you.